Her tiny voice cut through the noise of the crowded diner like a knife through silence. "Please, I need you to arrest me right now." 11 bikers stopped eating mid-bite, coffee cups frozen halfway to lips, eyes turning toward the small figures standing at the edge of their table. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old, with tangled auburn hair that looked like it hadn't seen a brush in weeks, dirt smudged across her cheeks, and clothes that hung off her thin frame like they belonged to someone twice her size. Her sneakers were held together with duct tape, and her jacket had a rip across the shoulder that someone had tried to fix with safety pins. Gunnar, the president of the Savage Kings Motorcycle Club, set down his fork slowly and studied the child with eyes that had seen too much suffering to dismiss this as a prank. At 52 years old, he'd spent 3 decades leading one of the most respected motorcycle clubs in Nevada, and his instinct for screaming that something was deeply, terribly wrong. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice gentle despite the scars on his knuckles and the patch on his leather vest that read President in bold letters. "Olivia," the girl whispered, her voice barely audible over the clatter of dishes and conversations from other tables. "Olivia Bennett." "Olivia, why do you think we need to arrest you?" asked Jax, a tall man with a salt and pepper beard and kind eyes that contradicted the skull tattoos covering his arms. He'd been a counselor at a boys' home before retirement, and something about this child's demeanor set off every alarm bell he'd developed over 20 years of working with traumatized kids. The girl reached into her pocket with shaking hands and pulled out a package of crackers, still sealed, the price tag from Savamart clearly visible. "Because I'm a thief. I stole these yesterday from the grocery store, and my teacher said thieves go to prison. So I need to go to prison now before I steal again." The entire table went still. Axel, a muscular man with a prosthetic right hand from his years serving in the Marines, felt his throat tighten. Something about the way this child spoke, so matter-of-fact about her own imprisonment, set off every protective instinct he developed during his 15 years working with veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. "When was the last time you ate a real meal, Olivia?" Gunnar asked carefully, noticing how the child's collarbone protruded sharply beneath her threadbare t-shirt. Olivia started counting on her fingers, her face scrunching up in concentration. "Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday." She looked up with wide hazel eyes that seemed too old for her face. 6 days. I had lunch at school on Monday, before the cafeteria lady said my account was negative and I couldn't eat anymore. 6 days? Rook, a red-headed man with burns scarring the left side of his face from a warehouse fire he'd run in to save 3 co-workers, slammed his hand on the table hard enough to make the silverware jump. "A kid your age hasn't eaten in 6 goddamn days." Olivia flinched at the noise, but didn't run. Instead, she stared at her broken shoes and said quietly, "I can't tell you why I haven't eaten. If I tell you, you might try to help me, and then I can't go to jail where they feed you 3 meals every day plus a snack." The devastating logic of a starving child hit every man at that table like a physical blow. This 10-year-old had calculated that prison was her best option for survival, that arrest was preferable to whatever life she was currently living. Gunnar exchanged glances with his brothers, seeing the same rage and heartbreak reflected in 11 pairs of eyes. He took a slow breath and leaned forward, making himself as non-threatening as possible despite the leather and the patches and the reputation that preceded the Savage Kings wherever they rode. "Olivia, honey, where are your parents right now?" The girl's eyes filled with tears that she blinked back furiously, like she'd been taught that crying was weakness. "My mom died when I was 7. Brain aneurysm. The doctor said she probably didn't feel any pain, but I don't know if that's true or if they just said it to make me feel better." Jax's hand moved to cover his heart. A child who'd already lost so much, who'd already survived the unsurvivable, and yet here she stood, still fighting. "What about your dad?" Axel asked softly, his prosthetic hand resting gently on the table where she could see it, a visible reminder that people survived terrible things and kept going. "He's home with Veronica. That's his girlfriend. They've been together for 2 years now." Olivia's small hands twisted the stolen crackers until the package crinkled. "Veronica says I eat too much. She says I'm the reason they can't afford nice things." She says my dad has to work 2 jobs because of me, and if I would just disappear, their lives would be so much better. Gunnar noticed the way Olivia's sleeves were pulled down to her wrists despite the warmth of the diner. He noticed the way the child stood with her weight shifted to one leg, like standing hurt. He noticed everything, because noticing had kept him alive in situations that should have killed him, and right now his instincts were telling him that this child was in immediate danger. "Can you roll up your sleeves for me, Olivia?" Gunnar asked gently. The girl hesitated, fear flickering across her face. "I'm not supposed to show people." "Who told you that?" "Veronica. She said if I showed anyone the marks, she'd make sure I never saw my daddy again. She said they'd take me away and put me with strangers who would be even meaner than her." Rook's jaw clenched so hard he could hear his teeth grinding. Beside him, Sterling, a former police officer who'd left the force after watching too many child abuse cases fall through the cracks of a broken system, was already pulling out his phone. "Olivia," Gunnar said, his voice steady despite the fury building in his chest. "I need you to trust me for just a minute." "Can you do that?" The girl studied Gunnar's face for a long moment, and whatever she saw there must have convinced her, because she slowly, carefully rolled up both sleeves. The bruises were in various stages of healing. Yellowing ones on her left forearm, fresh purple-black ones on her right wrist. Finger-shaped marks that clearly showed where adult hands had gripped too hard, held too long, hurt too much. "Jesus Christ," breathed Knox, the youngest member of the club at 31, who'd joined the Savage Kings after aging out of foster care at 18 with nowhere else to go and no family to claim him. "Did Veronica do this?" Gunnar asked, though he already knew the answer. Olivia nodded, fresh tears spilling down her dirty cheeks. "But only when I'm bad. She says if I wasn't so greedy, if I didn't ask for food all the time, if I didn't exist, she wouldn't have to punish me. My dad doesn't know. He works the night shift at the warehouse and then does construction during the day. He's always sleeping or working, so he doesn't see what happens." Axel felt sick. He'd seen this pattern too many times in his work with at-risk veterans and their families. The parent who worked themselves to exhaustion, the new partner who isolated the child, the abuse that happened in the gaps between supervision. Classic playbook for predators who targeted single parents with children. "Where are you supposed to be right now?" Jax asked, his counselor training helping him keep his voice calm even though he wanted to rage. "Outside. Veronica locked me out of the apartment Thursday night after Dad left for work. She said I was being dramatic about being hungry, and if I wanted food so bad, I could figure out myself. I've been sleeping in the park behind the public library, but the security guard chased me away last night because he said I was trespassing." Gunnar made a decision that would change everything. He stood up slowly, all 6'3" of his leather-clad presence suddenly making the diner feel smaller. "All right, Olivia. We're going to arrest you, but first we have to follow proper procedure." Hope flickered in the child's eyes. "What procedure?" "Every prisoner gets one last meal before processing. It's the law." Gunnar turned to the waitress, a middle-aged woman named Rita, who'd been listening with tears streaming down her face. "Rita, this dangerous criminal here needs the biggest stack of chocolate chip pancakes you've got. Add bacon, scrambled eggs, hash browns, orange juice, apple juice, and a chocolate milkshake. Put it on my tab." "Coming right up," Rita said, her voice thick with emotion. "Wait," Olivia protested weakly. "That's too much. I don't deserve." "You deserve everything, honey," Rook interrupted gently. "You deserve safety and food and people who protect you instead of hurt you. Now sit down and let us take care of you. If you believe that heroes come in all forms, and that sometimes the scariest-looking people have the biggest hearts, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, because this story proves that family isn't always blood, and real men protect children instead of looking away. While Olivia ate like she might never see food again, stuffing pancakes in her mouth so fast she barely chewed, Gunnar stepped outside and made a series of phone calls. The first was to Maverick, the club's unofficial information specialist who had a background in private investigation and a network that reached into places even law enforcement couldn't access. "Mav, I need everything you can find on Veronica, who's living with a widower named Bennett. He has a 10-year-old daughter named Olivia." Mother died 3 years ago. Last known address is somewhere in this area based on the kid showing up at the North Side Diner. Give me 5 minutes. Maverick's gravelly voice promised through the phone. The second call was to Detective Vincent Torres, a lieutenant in the Crimes Against Children unit who'd worked closely with the Savage Kings for years. The club had a reputation for finding abused kids that the system had missed, for showing up in places law enforcement couldn't reach, for being the buffer between vulnerable people and the predators who hurt them. Torres, we've got a situation. 10-year-old girl, clear signs of starvation and physical abuse. Hasn't eaten in 6 days, sleeping rough for 3 nights. Abuser is the father's live-in girlfriend. I need you at the North Side Diner in 20 minutes with a forensic medical examiner and CPS. On my way, Torres said without hesitation. Keep her safe until I get there. By the time Gunnar returned to the table, Olivia had finished most of the food and was looking at the remaining pancakes with a mixture of desire and guilt. I can't eat anymore, she said sadly. My stomach hurts. Veronica says my stomach shrunk because I'm too picky about food, but I think maybe it's because I haven't eaten in a while. That's exactly why, Jax confirmed, his counseling background giving him enough medical knowledge to understand. When you don't eat for several days, your stomach literally shrinks, and you can't process large amounts of food all at once without feeling sick. We'll get you a to-go box for the rest, and you can eat more later. Maverick called back within 10 minutes, and what he reported made Gunnar's blood run cold. Veronica Talbot, 34 years old, moved to Nevada from Oregon 2 years ago. She's got a record: 3 counts of child endangerment from her first marriage. Her ex-husband got full custody after CPS documented that she'd been withholding food as punishment for her stepson. The kid was hospitalized for malnutrition. She completed a mandatory parenting program and anger management, then moved states and started fresh. How the hell did she get access to another vulnerable child? Rook demanded, overhearing the conversation. Because she moved jurisdictions, and there's no national database that flags people like her when they enter new relationships with single parents, Maverick explained grimly. The system is broken, and predators like Veronica know exactly how to exploit those gaps. Gunnar looked at Olivia, who was carefully wrapping the remaining pancakes in napkins like they were precious treasures. Does your dad know about any of this, honey? About you being locked out? About being hungry? About the bruises? Olivia shook her head. He's really tired all the time. Veronica says if I bother him with my problems, it'll stress him out so much he might have a heart attack like his dad did. She says if Daddy dies, it'll be my fault for being needy. The psychological manipulation was textbook abuser behavior. Isolate the victim. Make them believe they're responsible for protecting their own abuser. Convince them that asking for help will result in worse consequences than suffering in silence. Here's what's going to happen, Gunnar announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent 30 years making hard decisions in impossible situations. We're going to take you home to get your things. All of us. 11 Savage Kings escorting one very brave girl who deserves protection. Terror flashed across Olivia's face. No, please. Veronica will be so angry. She'll hurt you. She has a baseball bat she keeps by the door, and she said if I ever brought people to the apartment, she'd use it. Axel couldn't help but smile, though there was no humor in it, just the grim determination of a man who'd face down enemies with actual weapons. Baby girl, let her try. They rode to a rundown apartment complex on the edge of town, the kind of place where the paint was peeling, half the security lights were broken, and the playground equipment looked like it hadn't been maintained in a decade. Olivia rode with Gunnar, wearing a helmet that kept sliding over her eyes, her small arms wrapped around his waist like she was afraid to let go. The rumble of 11 Harley-Davidsons arriving drew every resident to their windows. Motorcycle clubs had a reputation in neighborhoods like this. Sometimes they were trouble. Sometimes they were the only things standing between vulnerable people and the monsters who preyed on them. This was very clearly the latter. Gunnar knocked on the door of apartment 3B, firm and authoritative. The woman who answered was in her mid-30s, attractive in a hard way, wearing expensive athleisure clothes that seemed wildly out of place in this building. Designer yoga pants, a North Face jacket, diamond stud earrings that probably cost more than 3 months' rent. What the hell is this? Veronica demanded, her eyes moving from the bikers to Olivia and back again. We're bringing Olivia home, Gunnar said calmly, though every muscle in his body was coiled and ready. Veronica's face twisted with false concern so obvious it was almost comical. Oh my God, Olivia, we've been so worried. Where have you been? She reached for the girl's arm with perfectly manicured nails. Rook stepped between them, his burned face making him look particularly intimidating in the harsh fluorescent light of the hallway. Don't touch her. Excuse me? This is my home, and that's my daughter. You can't tell me what to do with my own family. She's not your daughter, Jax corrected coldly. She's her boyfriend's daughter, and from what we've seen, you've been treating her like she's disposable. A man appeared in the doorway behind Veronica, wearing a warehouse uniform with a name tag that read Derek. He was maybe 40, with tired eyes and the kind of exhausted posture that came from working 2 jobs and never sleeping. When he saw Olivia, his face transformed with genuine shock and relief. Olivia, baby, where have you been? I came home early because I couldn't focus at work. I've been going crazy trying to find you. He pushed past Veronica and dropped to his knees, pulling his daughter into a hug. Olivia went stiff in his arms, like she'd forgotten what safe affection felt like. I am sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry I made you worry. She ran away 3 days ago, Veronica said quickly, her voice dripping with practiced sympathy. She's been getting so rebellious lately, so dramatic. We've tried everything, but she just won't listen. Is that true, Olivia? Derek asked, pulling back to look at his daughter's face. The girl looked at Veronica, and Gunnar saw the fear there, the calculation of what would happen if she told the truth. When was the last time you saw your daughter eat a meal? Gunnar interrupted, his question directed at Derek. Derek blinked, caught off guard. This morning at breakfast before I left for work. Veronica made eggs and toast for both of them. Did you actually see Olivia eating? Axel pressed. Well, no. I left at 5 a.m. for my shift, but Veronica said, Your daughter hasn't eaten in 6 days, Sterling said flatly, his former cop voice cutting through the bullshit. We found her at a diner, trying to turn herself into us, because she thought prison was the only place she'd be guaranteed 3 meals a day. Derek went pale. What? No, that's impossible. Veronica, tell them that's not true. It's not true, Veronica protested. She's lying. She does this for attention. She steals food from the pantry and hides it in her room, then claims I don't feed her. It's manipulative behavior that her therapist and I have been working on. Show me, Detective Torres said, appearing behind the group of bikers with his badge clearly visible. Show me this hidden food you're talking about. Veronica hesitated, realizing too late that she'd backed herself into a corner. It's in her room. They moved inside, Derek looking increasingly confused and horrified. The apartment was nice. Too nice. New furniture, expensive electronics, designer touches that screamed money being spent everywhere except on the child who lived there. Olivia's room was at the end of the hall, and when they opened the door, several people gasped. It was barely bigger than a closet. A twin mattress on the floor with a single threadbare blanket. No pillows. No toys. No decorations. The closet held exactly 4 outfits, all worn and too small. There was no food anywhere. Where's all her stuff? Derek asked, his voice rising. Where are her toys? Her books? The stuffed animals her mom gave her? She outgrew all that childish stuff, Veronica said quickly. She asked me to donate it. I didn't, Olivia whispered. I would never give away Mama's things. Detective Torres was already photographing everything with his phone. Mr. Bennett, when was the last time you were in your daughter's room? Derek looked stricken. Veronica said Olivia wanted privacy, that she was getting to that age where she needed space. I respected that. I would knock and talk to her through the door, but I haven't actually been inside in months. Let me show you something, Jack said gently, kneeling beside Olivia. Honey, can you show your dad your arms? Olivia looked terrified, but something in her seemed to break, like she'd been holding on for so long that she couldn't hold on anymore. She rolled up her sleeves, revealing the constellation of bruises in various stages of healing. Derek made a sound like he'd been punched. Who did this to you? Olivia couldn't speak, but her eyes moved to Veronica, and that was answer enough. She's clumsy, Veronica said desperately. She falls all the time. She bruises easily. I've been telling you we should take her to a doctor, but you're always too busy working. Bruises from falling don't look like that, said Dr. Kenneth Park, the forensic medical examiner who'd arrived with Detective Torres. He photographed Olivia's arms, his professional demeanor not hiding the fury in his eyes. These are grip marks. Adult hands holding a child hard enough to break capillaries. These injuries are consistent with prolonged physical abuse. Derek looked at Veronica like he was seeing her for the first time. You hurt my baby girl. I disciplined her when necessary. Veronica shot back, her mask slipping. You never hear, Derek. You have no idea how difficult she is. She's manipulative and ungrateful. After everything I've done for her, and this is how she repays me? By turning you against me with lies. My daughter doesn't lie, Derek said, his voice dangerously quiet. Her mother taught her that honesty was sacred. If Olivia says you hurt her, then you hurt her. Detective Torres stepped forward. Veronica Talbot, you're under arrest for child endangerment, child abuse, and violating the terms of your previous CPS agreement in Oregon. You can't prove anything. Veronica snarled as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Actually, we can, Maverick said, appearing in the doorway with a laptop. Because I pulled your financial records, and in the past 2 years, you've transferred over $45,000 from Derek's account to your personal account. Money that should have been used for Olivia's care. You've also got charges at restaurants, spas, boutiques, all while Olivia's school records show her lunch account has been negative for 4 months. Derek's face went through shock, betrayal, and rage. You stole from us? You starved my daughter while spending money on yourself? It was my money too. Veronica protested as officers led her toward the door. I earned it by putting up with your needy kid. You have no idea what I sacrificed. Get her out of my sight, Derek said, his voice breaking. After the police cars pulled away, the apartment felt too quiet. Derek sat on the couch with his head in his hands while Olivia stood nearby, looking lost. The Savage Kings filled the small space, a wall of leather and fierce protection. I'm the worst father in the world, Derek said, his voice muffled. I let someone hurt my daughter. I was so focused on working, on providing, on trying to give her a stable life after her mom died that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me. You didn't want to see, Gunnar said bluntly, but not unkindly. That's different from deliberately ignoring it. You were grieving, exhausted, trying to survive. She took advantage of that. Predators like Veronica are experts at finding vulnerabilities and exploiting them. Detective Torres sat down beside Derek. Mr. Bennett, Child Protective Services is going to need to conduct a full investigation. Given the severity and duration of the abuse, we need to ensure Olivia's safety going forward. Are you taking her away from me? Derek asked, panic in his voice. That depends on several factors. Can you take time off work to be present? Do you have family support? Can you prove you're capable of putting her needs first? I'll do anything, Derek promised. I'll quit both jobs if I have to. I'll sell everything. Whatever it takes to make this right. You won't be doing it alone, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see an older woman standing in the doorway, with silver hair and Olivia's exact eyes. She wore nurse's scrubs and carried a bag that suggested she'd come straight from work. Grandma Ruth, Olivia cried, running to the woman who swept her up despite the girl being far too big to be carried. My grandbaby, Ruth said, tears streaming down her face. My sweet girl, I've been trying to reach you for 2 years. What? Derek looked confused. Mom, you said you didn't want to be involved. You said it was too hard seeing Olivia because she reminded you too much of Maria. Ruth's face hardened. I never said any of that. I called every week. I sent letters and gifts for birthdays and holidays. Veronica always answered and told me you all were busy, that Olivia didn't want to talk to me, that you'd moved on as a family, and I was interfering. Olivia's tears came harder. She told me you didn't want me anymore. She said I reminded you of Mama dying, and you couldn't stand to look at me. Oh, baby, no, Ruth said fiercely. You're my Maria's daughter. How could I ever not want you? You're everything I have left of her. Maverick pulled out his laptop again. I've got phone records here showing 47 calls from Ruth's number to this address over the past 18 months. Most lasted less than a minute. Text messages that were never answered. A paper trail of correspondence sent to this address, all returned unopened. Classic isolation tactic, Jax explained. Cut the child off from anyone who might notice the abuse or provide alternative support. Make them believe they're alone. Detective Torres made notes. Mrs. Bennett, would you be willing to move in temporarily while we conduct the investigation? I'm not leaving again, Ruth said firmly. I'm moving in tonight. Derek, you and I are going to have a long talk about what happened here, but right now this baby needs a bath, clean clothes, and more food. Then she needs to sleep in a real bed with real blankets, and she needs to know she's safe. Over the next several hours, the Savage Kings and Ruth transformed Olivia's room. Rook and Knox went shopping, returning with a proper bed frame, mattress, bedding, clothes in the correct size, and toys appropriate for a 10-year-old. Axel contacted the school to explain the situation and arrange for counseling services. Jax coordinated with the family doctor to schedule a full medical examination. Sterling set up a meal plan to help Olivia's digestive system adjust to regular food after prolonged starvation. Derek called his supervisor and quit his second job on the spot. My daughter needs me more than I need the money. I'll figure out the finances, but I can't miss any more of her life. By evening, Olivia's room looked like a child's room should. Colorful bedding, stuffed animals, books, a nightlight shaped like a moon. Ruth was cooking dinner, filling the apartment with smells that actually felt like home. Derek was helping Olivia organize her new clothes, and for the first time since her mother died, the girl was smiling. Gunnar pulled Derek aside. The Savage Kings don't just ride away after something like this. We're invested now. We'll be checking in, making sure you have what you need, connecting you with resources. You're part of our family now, whether you like it or not. I don't know how to thank you, Derek said, his voice thick with emotion. You already have, Gunnar replied. You listened. You believe your daughter. You chose her. That's all we needed to see. Before the bikers left, they gathered around Olivia one more time. Gunnar pulled out a small leather bracelet with a charm that read Savage Kings. This means you're one of us now, Gunnar explained, fastening it around Olivia's thin wrist. If you ever need help, if you're ever scared or in trouble, you call any of us. Day or night. Doesn't matter when or why. We show up. That's what family does. But I'm not a biker, Olivia said, confused. You're braver than most bikers I know, Rook said. You survived something that would break most adults. You found people who could help when you needed it most. You protected yourself when the people who should have been protecting you failed. That takes more courage than riding a motorcycle ever will. 3 months later, Veronica pleaded guilty to multiple counts of child abuse and fraud. She received an 8-year prison sentence and a permanent restraining order preventing contact with Olivia. The judge, reviewing the evidence, called it one of the most calculated and cruel cases of child abuse I've seen in 30 years on the bench. Derek followed through on his promises. He attended parenting classes, family therapy, and support groups for single parents. Ruth moved in permanently, creating stability and love that had been missing since Maria's death. The apartment filled with laughter again, with normal childhood chaos, with the sounds of a family healing. Olivia gained 20 pounds in 4 months. Her teachers reported that she was thriving academically and socially. The nightmares decreased. The flinching stopped. She started looking people in the eye again, started believing she deserved good things, started understanding that what happened to her wasn't her fault. Every Saturday, she volunteered at Savage Kings events. Not because she had to, but because that's what family does. She helped serve meals to homeless people, organized toy drives for foster children, and assisted with fundraisers for abuse survivors. The bikers taught her about strength, about standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves, about how real men protect children instead of looking away. On her 11th birthday, the Savage Kings threw her a party at their clubhouse. 40 bikers showed up, along with kids from her school, her family, and Detective Torres. There was cake and presents and laughter that echoed off the walls. Ruth cried happy tears. Derek looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw someone who was going to be okay. During the party, A shy 8-year-old boy approached Olivia. He was thin, with scared eyes and bruises on his arms that looked painfully familiar. "Excuse me," he whispered. "I heard about what happened to you. Can you help me too?" Olivia didn't hesitate. She took his hand and walked him straight to Gunnar. "This is my friend. He needs help." And so the cycle continued. The saved becoming the savers, the protected becoming the protectors, because that's what family does. The Savage Kings had found another child who needed them, and they would show up just like they always did. Years later, Olivia would stand at a podium at a fundraiser for child abuse prevention. At 15, healthy and confident and fierce, she would tell her story to a room full of people who needed to hear it. She would talk about the day she decided that prison was better than home, about walking up to 11 terrifying bikers and asking them to arrest her, about finding family in the most unexpected place. "I learned something important that day," she would say, her voice steady and sure. "Real strength isn't about muscles or motorcycles or looking tough. Real strength is seeing someone who needs help and deciding you're going to do something about it." The Savage Kings could have ignored me. They could have called someone else to deal with the problem. But they didn't. They showed up, and they stayed, and they made sure I knew I mattered. The Savage Kings would be in the audience, 11 men who'd chosen to be protectors for people who had no one else. They wouldn't see themselves as heroes. They just see it as doing what needed to be done, protecting someone who couldn't protect herself, standing between a vulnerable child and the monster who hurt her. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to remember that heroes don't always look like heroes. Sometimes they look like bikers having breakfast at a truck stop, waiting for a little girl brave enough to ask for help. Sometimes the scariest looking people have the biggest hearts. Sometimes family isn't blood. It's the people who show up when everyone else looks away.